Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the front lawns. Let me start with the bad news first. I'm not Shashi Tharoor. I can't aspire to be. Shashi is a very dear, very old friend, and we work together. I can't match his eloquence, but I will do my best to introduce Walter's wonderful book. Walter and I first met soon after I had retired from the diplomatic service and came back to Delhi. And I was invited by none other than Sanjoy Roy for a small festival that they would do every month in Delhi called UTBT, whereas the full name was Under the Banyan Tree on a Full Moon Night. And that's where the main act was the German ambassador as the musician. And I said, this is interesting. You have a diplomat who is a trained musician and who's actually performing in front of an audience in a place like Delhi. So let me just begin by saying that what you have is not just an ordinary diplomat, not even an extraordinary, but a very unusual diplomat. And a lot of that, a lot of his empathy and his passion for India is reflected in his book because, in a sense, it's a second coming. He was the typical hippie who finished his graduation and backpacked through the entire South Asian subcontinent and actually first arrived in my hometown, Amritsar, from the Atari-Wagah border and paid his respects at the Golden Temple and at the Jallianwala Bagh. And I was telling him how we have this interesting connection, not just at my hometown Amritsar, but my grandfather writing books about the partition and about Jallianwala Bagh. And I want to start with that. You refer very movingly about the partition of India and Pakistan in your book as you describe your visit to Amritsar. And there's a comparison with Europe's obsession with the partition of Germany. Tell us a little bit about your early days in India and how you reflected upon that particular dimension.
Well, you see, when I came first to India, I was like 22 years old, long hair. Okay, I still got long hair, but at that time I had a backpack and then, traveling in train, second class, where people went in and out through the windows. And so it was really a different kind of India experience. And I arrived in New Delhi in the red light district and we took a hotel there. So very different. But this was a dream of many of my generation who looked for something different, some kind of spirituality which we didn't find in the West. We thought we have to go to East, to India to find it. And well, 45 years later I came back as a German ambassador or so. And let's see, did I find India which I was dreaming of? Yes and no, because I need 10 lives to find this India, because it's such an incredible, great country, so I would need more time for it. Now, what you are referring to on the partition, the book is, of course, for the German and European audience, but also for Indian audience. For the European audience and German audience, I think it's important to see, that's what I tell every minister who comes here or member of parliament, that they have to give up their Eurocentric view. What we do is, that's what your foreign minister Jaishankar said, keeps saying, we in Europe, we think we are the center of everything, because there are all the post-colonial, the pre-colonial countries, and our values are the most important, but it's not. 80% of the world live in the global south and not in Europe. So that's why it's important to see what's happening in the global south. Now, the partition, if you talk about the years 1945 and 1950 in Europe, everybody says the beginning of the Cold War, the refugees which came from Eastern Europe to Western Europe, and this kind of things. What happened in India at the partition, with the biggest refugee movement of 20 million people, the biggest refugee numbers in the last century, nobody knows really except historians and whatever. So this has to stop, because we we have to dedicate more time and more emphasis on what's happening in your country.
Walter, you've also explored spirituality at a very personal, a very intimate level. You've gone to some of the holiest places in India. You've traveled through the mountains. And you say something very poignant that India started asking those questions about our existence, our being, a lot before anyone else did. So you went to temple towns, you went to Muslim dargahs like Ajmer, you went to the Golden Temple in Amritsar, and so on. Did you find what you were looking for?
Well, we have to ask some sadhus and gurus whether they have found it, because otherwise I would be sitting here in an orange dress. I think the spiritual world in India is outstanding, and I traveled from through all corners of the country because I wanted to find out what's the DNA. My position, I was ambassador since decades, and my philosophy of being a diplomat was always to be out there, not to sit in the residency and in Chanakya Puri and go to these fancy diplomatic cocktails. No, you have to be out there in the slums, in the gatherings, in the festivals, to see what do the Indians really think, what is their DNA, why are they there, what are they doing. So that's why I wanted to travel, that's why I did travel, and no bodyguards, nothing else. I think this is maybe it's a new kind of diplomacy, or maybe it's my kind of diplomacy, but wherever I went, and I was in South Africa as ambassador, and in Kenya, and in other places, wherever I went, I did this. And I think it's good because I feel very close to you, because I think I got a grasp, an idea of your mentality, of your soul, of your DNA, and that's important. And I feel almost like being Indian,
I'd like to think that my wife Mani, who's sitting there, and I have also done that in some small measure, but nothing compared to you and your adventures, getting off the beaten track and sitting with the sadhus and sitting with the youngsters and going to colleges and universities. And that's why I thought that, given how little Europe knows really about India, perhaps Walter's book, its title should be not what the West should learn from India, but also what the West should learn about India. And there's a lot of that useful information at a very practical level. If I were in the European Union today, I'd probably recommend that every diplomat, before getting assigned to India, it should be compulsory reading for him. And from Walter's point of view, probably every parliamentarian, Walter, because you've dealt with a bit of detachment, shall I say, amongst parliamentarians.
Yes, well, I try to, whoever came to this country from European parliaments or from German parliament, I tried to get them an idea what's this India. And sometimes I was successful. Others, if you read some stories, you will smile but that's the truth. They arrive with their head full of their constituency in their country, and spend 2 days here, and after 2 days they still have their head full of their constituency and they leave again. So this is not a way to learn about the country. So you have to really get interested in the country. And I tell you, it takes you 2 lives, 3 lives to understand the country. India, as maybe you might not know because you live here, take things for granted. India is such a diverse country. Everything is true and the contrary is true. It's a country of contradictions and a country of extremes. You can see the Bugattis in Mumbai, racing there. One Bugatti costs $100,000, and you have slums, and you go to the moon, and you have plugs in the countryside. Everything is to be found. So it's many countries in one country, in many centuries in one country, and this is so complex that a normal person who is not really an expert will first shy away, say, oh my gosh, this is too complicated, okay, I don't understand what's happening, why is the cow there, and whatever. That's why, read the book, that's what I tell them.
Walter, you were here during the early days of the Ukraine war, that's Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the war that's still going on. And you drew some important lessons from it, and one of those was India will do its own thing because it's different, and don't sermonize, don't send delegations trying to persuade India to the European point of view. Tell us a little bit more how you arrived at that conclusion.
Of course, we were criticizing the Russians when they attacked the Ukraine, but I do accept and understand that India has a different position, and we all should, because every country does things according to their own interests. And your neighbors are different, and our neighbors are different. This is a conflict in Europe now. That's what India tells us. Solve your problem. This is not our problem. We have our own things here, and if you help us, fine. But for us, the consequence is higher oil prices and less development money, because it all goes into weaponry. So I do understand that India has a different point of view, and we better should do this in Europe, not coming with a moral pedestal and tell people, you have to vote for this, you have to vote for that. Leave Indians to decide this by themselves, and they make a good, wise decision by themselves. It's a huge country, and it's a country which is, has its own power, and it's not, coordinated with military pacts. It's a kind of an impartial might there, but you have good contacts with Ukraine and good contacts with Russia. You have good contacts with Netanyahu and good contacts with the Palestinians, with the European Union, and with China. It's a kind of a practical, go day-to-day business. But no other country in the world has this possibility to be maybe a mediator, maybe a go-between, because India can do that, because they're in the G20, in the BRICS, and in the Quad, and everyone on this globe looks with respect to your country, and I think that's an achievement.
Thank you, Walter. Do you think that since your departure from Delhi, your government in Berlin is still listening to you? Because there's been a bit of friction over some intemperate comments.
If they would not say it. I don't know. I do my things, and when I presented a book in German language, I did lots of interviews, and of course the press departments of every ministry is reading it. If they internalize things, that's the better. I'm not an ego person who says they all have to quote me. No, but I really think they make a big mistake if they don't take India into more consideration. We have elections right now. Now the new government will be there, I don't know, in a few months. I really can hope that when they start off not only talking about the Middle East and Ukraine and Trump and and China, but also about India, and take India as a real good old friend.
Walter, one of the things I admired as I was going through your book was that you didn't try to shy away from difficult topics that diplomats are often inclined to. You've reflected upon the growth of the political right of Hindutva. You've looked at, is India getting more authoritarian or less democratic? And you've come to your own conclusions. Why don't you share some of your thoughts with the audience?
Yeah, you see, whenever I do interviews with media, the European media, German media, they tend to have a kind of a fixation in their head, criticizing India, only the bad things, putting the bad things in forefront. Now, if there have been some accidents with some fanatics or Hindu fanatics, then they put this like this would happen everywhere. Or if there's something, some kind of mishap in some election, they just put it in forefront. I think this is wrong. I think they should come with that journalists should report with an open mind and should see the pros and the cons. And I try to present the pros and the cons. Now, if I have an interview and they start immediately, well, don't you think under Modi is India under the threat to become a totalitarian system and discrimination of minorities? You know, you can always debate these things. I'm not saying everything is perfect here, but no democracy is perfect. Not the German one, not the US one, and not the Indian one. There is no perfect democracy. And of course there are shortcomings in the country. But the point is, how do I address this? Do I come with a megaphone and say publicly, loud, you know, India should do this and this and this, or do I do this behind closed doors among friends and tell them, you know, there and here, you know, we find some things have to be, should be maybe done the other way. That's something else. Now, to do this, of course, I have to go out of my comfort zone. Now, if I only stay at a residence and go to my cocktails or something, I would not understand what's happening. So I said I want to see every corner of the country, and when I went to Nagpur for other things, opening the metro there and doing other things, I thought, okay, this is the center of the RSS. I want to go there. I want to go to the chief of the RSS. I want to talk to him because I see that half of the government is either went to RSS or are members of RSS. What's this organization, especially as German, because there are all these accusations of the close cooperation between RSS and Nazis in the 20s or 30s of last century. So more than that, I had to wanted to see and ask the right question, like, what about these connections between Nazism and whatever and RSS? But I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. If I only read about it and say, oh my gosh, you don't do that, no, that's not good. I wanted to see that, and I did it. And of course, I agreed that we don't talk about what, the contents of the talks, but I can tell you the answers I got were sufficiently in the direction that maybe he knew what I wanted to hear. That's true. So, and I don't know whether the followers, or all the fanatic followers, would agree with him. But what he said was enough for me to leave the place and report it back to my then Chancellor Merkel and to the government. And I think that's the job of a diplomat. Of course, there was shitstorm afterwards. Why do you go there? Are you supporting him? No, this is not my perception as an ambassador. As ambassador, I want to talk. I go to the communists. I go to the RSS. I go to wherever there's something interesting. I want to go, and I do it not clandestinely, but I do it openly, so that they see. I did an interview the very next day with Hindu, front page, and Haider is here, and front page telling why did I go, and few months later, other ambassadors went also. So, I mean, they saw they didn't kill me afterwards, so that's why they went, maybe.
I know the Australian ambassador went, and he also got a lot of flack from the liberal media back in Sydney. What was he doing at the RSS headquarters? And I think that kind of an incident also helps you understand the travails of a diplomat. Do and you're damned, don't and you're damned, right? And I think the job really is to try and engage with the widest possible cross-section of the country in which you have been accredited. And I say this with the background of somebody who presented his credentials in Egypt to a Muslim Brotherhood president. So there's a little bit of personal experience in all of this. Walter, you have a couple of fond memories about India's flair for the Jugaad and how it contrasts with the German obsession with order and organization. Anything that you want to share with us?
Well, you see, the book is called What the West Should Learn from India. And one thing is something which we maybe have known but have forgotten, which is Jugaad. Wherever I'm in India and I see things which are improvised, and when you don't follow the rules book, then it's Jugaad. Of course, there's a criticism. Too much Jugaad means you don't wait for the real solution. You mug yourself through, and you should rather go for the perfect solution. Yeah, that's what the Germans think, and that's why we have so many rules. And sometimes we move very slow, and you move faster. I remember when I was in Trivandrum, and there was a storm overnight, and then the next day we went to I wanted to go to the south of the tip of India, and there were trees, big trunks of trees blocking the road, and we were blocked there, and a huge traffic jam, and then we said, okay, what do we do? There are trunks here and trunk on the back. No way we can do it. There was no tool to do that. So they went to the next temple and got a temple elephant, a Lakshi, of course. And then Lakshi came and took away the trunks. In Germany, you would call the police and helicopters and whatever, and you wait a whole day. Here it took 20 minutes or so, and we got solved the problem.
But you've also been to but you've also been to some of the completely high-tech global capability centers of Bosch and Siemens and others. What is your takeaway from those?
Well, more and more German companies and European companies see the advantages of producing in India. Because, if you go to Pune, if you go to Hyderabad, if you go to other places, Bangalore, it's like it's unlike other places in the world. Maybe in Silicon Valley, if you go to some places in Bangalore, it feels like Silicon Valley. You can, you have all these brilliant IT specialists. They invent the cars without drivers, and they produce it, and they produce things which we don't have on the market yet, which will be out there in 4 years. And so they make a combination of the German investment or European investment and their own brain capacity. Now, in your country, maybe, of course you know it, but I tell you as foreigner, one of the advantages is you live in a very populated country, of course, so the competition, the competitiveness is an issue. You start in the kindergarten and it goes up from there that you have to be the best. You look around and then, okay, so once you move up, reach a certain level and you compare yourself worldwide, you will see you are outstanding because of this competitiveness, you are better than many others. You know more languages because you not only speak Hindi and Kannada and Urdu and whatever. So you have many, many languages. You have the 10 biggest religions of the world in the country. You have a federative state of 28, so you know how to do compromises. No wonder that so many CEOs in the world of big companies are Indians. Look around and then you will see Silicon Valley without Indians would not be Silicon Valley. This is because this kind of competitiveness you have and this entrepreneurship which you got in your bones, and this is one of the things we in Europe would have to relearn to be so competitive and to be so eager to have success.
Walter, before I throw it open for questions, I have to ask you about your anti-amb, your flaming red ambassador car as the ambassador's official vehicle that made quite a statement in Delhi. Was it a passion or was it a prop?
For those who haven't seen me with the red ambassador car, it was the first car I saw, of course, in India 45 years ago. This incredible black and yellow taxi car. And when I came back as an ambassador, I saw this red duck, ugly duck in the corner because it was collecting dust. And I thought, what's this car? This looks like an ambassador car. And then my driver said, yeah, this is an ambassador car. We use it for postal services because we have this shining Mercedes and cockpits like airships, and Audis. And I said, roll it out here. I want to see what it is. And it was a red ambassador car. It looked beautiful. If you see it in the book, you see a photo of it. And I said, you know what? I want to take this car as my official car. Of course, Jugaad, they had to put some flags, stamps there, to run around with the German flag. And from that day on, I presented my credentials with the car. And since it was an old car, it's anti. And it was female, of course, and then it was anti-ambi. And everyone, wherever I went, people said, okay, Ambassador, it's great to see you, but where's anti-ambi? It's like they say, oh yeah, we don't want to see you, we want to see anti-ambi. And everyone took a picture, including, politicians and Merkel, and it was a statement of it wasn't a PR stand. It was something which came from the heart. This car is India, and it showed the relationship between us and myself and your country. So I wish I would have come with anti-ambi, but I'm not ambassador anymore, so it's now still in the embassy. I don't know what it's doing now, but if I would come again, I would maybe take the red ambi.
Okay, let me open it up for questions. Gentleman in the cap, yes.
मैं हिंदी भी बोल सकता हूँ.
Yok, मेरी हिंदी बहुत अच्छी नहीं है.
Okay, I ask in English. सोने की होती तो क्या करती, अभिमान करे देखो बांस की जाई. फ्लूट के ऊपर है, इसका मैं कर रहा हूँ. राग बिहाग बिहार मल्हार और सोरठ देश की धूम मचाई.
देखिए,
अधरों पे धरी मुस्काए रही जन सीख के मंत्र कौन से आई. ये फ्लूट बजाते हैं, इसके बारे में मेरे को.
And the lady in green in front, yes. On the left.
I have a question. I believe that Germans are. Yeah, so Germans are perfectionists, and then Indians are, they always find workarounds, right? So what if we wait for generations and we don't find a workaround and we find a perfect product which is never there? I don't think that there is something called perfect thing. And if we don't find workaround to live, how will we wait for years and centuries and live? So what I believe is that Jugaad is really a good thing.
Quick.
Yeah. So what do you think about, a perfect product versus Jugaad, actually as a way of life?
Okay. Let me take two more questions before I get the ambassador to respond. This gentleman in front, yeah?
Thank you, Walter. Your admiration for India is really commendable, but don't you feel that the notion of India, and I want to pinch on the first question that was asked, the charm of India lies in its imperfections. If we keep brushing uncomfortable topics with conversations here and there with a few powers that be in Nagpur and take it on their word without reckoning with reality, then I think we would be sadly mistaken. And don't you think then and I haven't read the book, so forgive me, but what the West can learn with India is a more workable approach.
Okay, the gentleman in the green shirt at the back. I don't want to ignore the back.
Walter sir, I have a question for you too, and I have a question for Navdeep sir. Walter sir, my question is that what can the world learn by the way Germany treated human rights after the Third Reich? Because I remember reading on a comparative constitutional debate that when a German law came relating that a hijacked plane would be shot down, the Burkina Faso rejected that, highlighting that we cannot go to the days of the Third Reich. And Navdeep sir,
I think today I am only asking the questions. Okay, so let Walter respond. Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, let me start with the last one, which is, it's difficult to compare different countries with different histories. German history with, as you mentioned, with the Nazi history, with the Holocaust, is a very different history. That's why we have a very difficult, we had a very difficult start after the Second World War, because we were totally in the doghouse, totally isolated, and rightly so, because we have had these concentration camps and all this. Now, of course, we moved on, and of course we tried to learn from our past, and to be very sensitive when there is right wing coming up and neo-Nazis are coming up. So I think I don't want to praise ourselves. I think it's our natural burden, national burden, which we had to work with. Every country has its own national burdens and national challenges. Now, in India, of course, it's a different story. There, you had the burden that you were occupied by, you had the British rulers there, which took away a lot of your wealth and left you poor and with a broken self-confidence after in your independence. And in the independence, you came into as a divided country. So that's why I don't want to compare the human rights and the situation. And it's every country has their own history and has to deal with it. And that's what I said before. We do it in a friendly manner and talking, among friends, how we can solve this. On Jugaad, if you see the combination of Jugaad and perfectionism, there are two concepts. What I have heard from IT developers in the US and in other places, in the Silicon Valley, they use also a certain amount of, they wouldn't call it Jugaad, but a certain amount of not moving around, but leaving a certain percentage of things not to the perfectionism, but leave it open to some kind of Jugaad-like development. That's why one of the reasons why the IT specialists from India are so good, because they have lived with both concepts and they can deal with both concepts.
Thank you very much. Please, a big round of applause for a most unusual ambassador. And please go and pick up a copy of this book and get it signed from the ambassador. Thank you very much for being here.
We would like